What you are about to see are two clips taken out from episode 2 of Podcast Infinity, A Conversation from Hyperspace. Because I don't have the technology to keep creating episodes of Podcast Infinity, A Conversation from Hyperspace, I decided to start a second podcast series until I'm actually able to create episodes for Podcast Infinity. My new podcast series is called A Psychedelic Point of View, and this episode is going to act as episode 0.5 as episode 1 has already been made, where Mark Germs 2 came on as a guest. So, until I'm actually able to make episode 2 of Podcast Infinity, A Conversation from Hyperspace, and edit these clips down in the way that I had originally meant for them to be, I do hope that you all enjoy episode 0.5 of A Psychedelic Point of View.
DMT Infinity. He's gonna fucking train your brain.
Shout out to DMT Infinity.
This is a collaboration with DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity, you crazy motherfucker. This is our local astronaut. DMT Infinity is our local astronaut. You know, right now, NASA has a couple guys in space, and who cares what they're doing, because DMT Infinity is the real astronaut. This boy is steady blasting off, if you know what I'm saying.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity.
DMT Infinity. DMT Infinity. 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 Infinity.
What are your opinions and what are your thoughts on the dream state?
So if you asked me this question probably, I don't know, a year ago, my opinion would have been completely different, because the dream state, meaning like dreams at night or just...
Yes.
Okay. A year ago, my opinion would have been that fuck dreams. I don't like to dream. I still smoke weed before bed, but like not for the same reasons. So when I was a kid, I had nightmares growing up as a kid, and I had nightmares all the time, like every single night, just nightmares, just gruesome nightmares. Like I'm like 5 years old having nightmares of people chasing me with bloody knives, and like just some weird gruesome nightmares for no reason. Like I guess maybe it was for a reason, but I just don't really know the reason. There was trauma that happened in my life prior when I was 3, but then I was put in counseling when I was 5. But these nightmares persisted up until I was 25 years old. And one day I was talking to my friend Twiz about this, and he was just like, you've done DMT so many times. And he was like, if I gave you the bowl with DMT in it, you'd smoke it, no matter the fear you had. So what's the problem with dreaming at night? Like, he was kind of just explaining to me, like, you're manifesting the fear. Like, he was explaining that I am creating this fear by thinking about the fear before I go to bed. Like right before I go to bed, I'm like anxious. As it starts to get nighttime, I'm like, oh my God, it's getting night.
Well, and sometimes it isn't even just the fact that you're thinking about it. It is the fact that it is still in your subconscious memory, and you have to work on that, even while you're working on the fact that it's in your conscious mind.
Right, though. That's a good point. Because it's just like a repetitive thing that it's like a memory. It's like a muscle memory, or that my body was just used to. But after he basically explained to me that it's kind of ridiculous, and like he basically said thoughts create reality. So at night, stop fearing, stop being scared. So I tried it one night, and I literally laid down at night and said, I am not scared, I am not scared, I am not scared. And I fell asleep, and I didn't have a nightmare. The next night, I had a normal dream. My first like normal dream since like I don't know, since I can even remember. It was just like just a normal dream of what people say a dream is like, when you have the typical something happened in your day and that happens in your dream. That's never happened to me in real life until the second night. And then after that, I haven't had a dream since, and I'm 26 now, and this is a year ago. So I guess to answer your question, my opinion on the dream state now is it's pretty dope. like once you learn how to maneuver with it, it's pretty interesting. It's just like psychedelics, where it's like once you learn how to just move in the dream world, there's certain techniques you can do to help you lucid dream and help you do this. Now I still maybe do have that muscle memory because I don't have as much of an interest in dreams as much, but they're all right.
Have you ever thought about the possibility that every single dream that you have is you tapping into another reality?
Yeah. I generally believe that dream states are just another form of tripping, another form of the tryptamine world in a way, because psychedelics tend to be everywhere, including in our neural brain chemistry. Beautiful dog.
Isn't it though? It just randomly appeared on my fucking porch. It's not my dog. I don't know where the fuck it came from.
Yeah, the camera's a little down. If you want to turn the camera up on your end.
Yeah, no. The reason why it's down like that is because I'm constantly repositioning my camera.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine then. But yeah, I've thought that dreams are like just another side of DMT space in a way. Like, because when you dream at night, the reason why you get tired is melatonin, tryptophan, DMT, serotonin. These are all tryptamines, technically. I mean, so
what exactly got you into making psychedelic art, psychedelic video content in general, and art in general?
So 2014 I even thought about making content, but so 2014 when I first tried DMT, I also 2014 before DMT, I found Terence Mckenna. I was just really intrigued by the way he spoke about psychedelics. Now, at this point in my life, I was like a wannabe thug type of guy, and that's just who I was, just trying to be a rapper.
Hold that thought real quick, because that is actually something that I do want to hear. But I do want to say that there was one thing that Dennis McKenna had said that I just couldn't vibe with, and I almost completely disagree with what he was saying. He had said in an interview or something, I don't remember which one, you can find it on YouTube, and he was like, the main reason why people were so intrigued by Terence McKenna's ideas was because of the way that he spoke. I think that it goes a lot deeper than that. It's not just the way he was speaking, it is what he was saying and the points that he was making and how timeless what he was saying actually was. It's not just because of the way that he was able to communicate his ideas, and it is all about the fact that what he was saying was usually always on point.
Yeah, and even when it wasn't, he wasn't scared to admit that it's a theory. You know what I mean? That he's just putting out theories. It's interesting.
But back to the criminal activity.
Well, back in 2014, I was just like a completely different type of person than I am today. But I just, finding Terence McKenna changed everything. It altered the path. It just opened my mind to think that people can think like that in the first place. Because I've never been around anyone that thought like that before at this point in my life. So I'm listening to Terence speak, and I'm like, damn. I told my friend Twiz about Terence when he came over, and he was like, wow, like he was mind blown. Back then his vocabulary was much bigger than mine. So the craziest part about this is back then I didn't even understand. I understood like 5 to 15% of what Terence McKenna was saying. I didn't really understand a word. My vocab was not big enough to comprehend the things that he was saying. I had to literally go back sometimes and research words. I had to pause a video of his and research a word he said on Google to find out the definition of it. And up until eventually, I started fully comprehending and understanding. But after meeting Terence in 2015, I ended up going through some trauma, I guess. So this is when I was first diagnosed with DMT. So I was probably like 20, 30 DMT trips in. And I ended up having a cancer scare. And basically, this cancer scare was I had a bunch of lumps throughout my whole body, and it's my lymph node system. And the lumps are still there, technically. And they say that, you could get lymphoma, which is a form of lymph node cancer, one day because they're all swollen still. But, like, I had a cancer scare, and for 2 weeks, these people, basically, I didn't know if I had cancer or if I didn't. So for that 2 weeks, I literally freaked in my fucking head. I lost myself a little bit in my head thinking, what will I do? I was first diving with DMT, so I was thinking to myself, like, I should probably find a way to get this information out there. None of my friends or family would even understand what I wanted to say. I was thinking to myself that if I did have cancer, that people would be mourning someone who's not even me anymore. They would have been mourning the old me that wasn't me anymore. So I started making videos. I guess mainly because originally it wasn't for YouTube. Originally it was just for my family, my friends. Like, I thought to myself, my daughter isn't even going to know her dad, like if I had cancer at this point. Like, all these thoughts were running through my head. So then I decided just to speak my thoughts out on a camera. It just helped me through it. So then I started making videos. They started building up on my computer. And then I decided to start uploading. And then it all went on from there. And it all stemmed from the fact that I tried DMT, thought that I was going to die. So then I thought to myself, how do I express myself out and, like, just express what I'm going through, what I've been going through? Because at the time, in the beginning of my psychedelic experience, it was so, I mean, it's not that it's still magical, but it was so magical back then, like, because I didn't know anything. Like, now it's different because, like, I've learned so many theories and ideas and philosophies from so many trips and so many people and so many other trips, and I've gone on experiences with people and listened to this and watched this podcast and did this research. But back then I knew nothing about molecules, substances, drugs, anything. I didn't know anything about receptors, or I really couldn't even tell you what a psychedelic was. I didn't really know. I remember when I first tried DMT, I didn't even know what it looked like. I just, but that's how I started making videos.
What was your most memorable psychedelic experience, and which substance did you consume to give you that experience?
It was definitely DMT. It's hard to think of which experience though. With DMT, over the years, they've kind of just blended. Hold on real quick. I had to shut the window. It was getting chilly in here. But after just doing DMT over the years, they just started to blend together all the experiences. So it's like every time I go back, it just brings me back to the one experience that it's been trying to show me the whole time. It's like a giant collective now of multiple experiences. Some of the most impactful ones were before I knew what it was, because after I knew what it was, those same impactful trips that would have put me in my fear place, I just accept, because now I know what it is, so I know how to just let go to it and trust it. But I guess because I'm trying to think of my most memorable one, it would be just, so a lot of my DMT trips have become typical. It's weird. Like,
do you ever have the experience where it's like whenever you have a psychedelic trip and then that one comes down, and even if it's like a year later, you have another psychedelic experience on the same substance, but it's like you take off where you leave off? No,
that's how it's always been for me with DMT. Because
there was fucking crazy.
Yeah, it was like a continuation. It was like for me, it was I would do DMT, and then I continue back on that same lesson, and then somehow continue back. And so there was, I guess the most memorable one would just be the fact that some of the first experiences of meeting Mother Ayahuasca, some of the first experiences, because this is on DMT, some of my first experiences with going to the City of Light living one of a really crazy one was living the life of a light being, right? Where it's like I traveled through the colorful vortex in this tunnel and pit stopped at this place with these jester beings, and stopped at this pit stop with this fourth dimensional machinery, and stopped at this place in the tunnel in the vortex, and then eventually got to the city of light, or Emerald City, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But in this city, it's like I lived an entire life there. As I was progressing farther down the vortex, each time it's like I would start, the farther down, the farther away from this world I got, the farther away from this world's memories I got, the farther away from me understanding what human is necessarily, and remembering what I did and where I am and what's going on. And eventually I got to the city, and it was kind of like a I've always been there type thing. It was like that's all I knew. I didn't, just like right now, all we know is this third dimensional world. There, it was like all I knew was
Yep,
that.
and that actually brings
world.
me back
then,
to the.
But then the craziest thing is, I don't, my bad, but like the craziest thing is the fact that I lived an entire life there from like young to old, which I would have estimated was about 80 years or so. But that's just my guess. Maybe it could have been 80 years. It could have been, it felt like 50 years, but really it was 5-10 minutes. But I had a family there. It was weird. I had a wife, a child, a thing, like, but they were made of light. But then they'd also flashed me, and then all of a sudden after growing there, I flash, and then I'm at this park in the city of light with this female entity, this goddess woman, all made of light, and her hair was made of light, and she turned around, and her hair that was made of light like swaying around, and it was the most beautiful fucking thing ever. And that was one DMT trip. There's very few, like, I could probably only remember like a good 20 or 30 off the top that are individual. The rest of them have been, like you said, a continuation of I'll trip, and then in 2014 to 2015 is the times where I really dive deep with DMT. After that, I kind of got a little hold of myself, and like, you know, realized, well, maybe I need to slow down. Because I took a 2-year break from psychedelics as well after that, because I just needed time to get the information right from DMT, because it was insane. Sometimes I would do DMT 2-3 times in a day. A lot of times I would just do it every day, at least once a day, because I always had it. Like at one point, DMT was easier for me to get than cannabis. And it was crazy. Like I remember times where I had no cannabis. So I was like, oh, fuck. I want to get high, but I can't get high. So then I thought to myself, oh, maybe I'll smoke some DMT. And that ended up badly. Because that trip, it basically said, I'm not weed. I'm not here to get you high.
Stop abusing me, man. I'm not weed.
Well, it was almost like if you want to use me all the time, then you're gonna get knowledge. You gotta do it for the right reasons. But if you're gonna just sit here and try to get high, let me show you something. And that was one of my first experiences where it put me in my place, and I was just terrified for the 5 minutes and uncomfortable for 10 minutes after, realizing, oh fuck, I fucked up. But it just kind of showed me that it has a personality to it. Over the years of just after experience and back to back, it's just like it's trying to show me something, and the reason why it can, you know, pick up where it left off from the last trip is because it has a memory enough to remember your last trip, to remember you as a person, because you took the mushroom. So it gets to know you, and you get to know it, or whether it's the mushroom, the DMT, the ayahuasca, the LSD. All these things are, I feel like, just conscious beings that you get to know over the years.
I think that just gives more validity to the idea that these experiences are a lot more real than people actually give them credit for. And whenever you were talking about living like about 80 years in this one place, it's kind of like a dream, because in a dream you can have an entire family. It can feel like you have been there your entire life, but then you just wake up in this reality, and then you're like, oh, that was just a dream. Well, could they not just be one and the same thing? This reality and all of these and dreams are actually just one and the same thing, that they're not two separate things. because it is that convincing.
Right, though. That's a good point. I've looked at dreams as, because when you dream at night, your brain's producing so many different molecules that it's not just one molecule. And I think that's what chops it down to. A lot of people are like, DMT is what makes you dream at night. And maybe.
But it's much more than that.
Yeah.
Even if DMT is being released, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, exactly. It's all the other molecules that are being released have an effect with the DMT and all this other shit. It's just with everything that's being released in your brain when you're dreaming at night, which is allowing you to access that dream state. I almost think dream states are kind of like a rendering place for getting ready to go into that world. It's kind of like a practice zone, right? Like, because I know I know personal people that are like extremely practiced in that world. Like they're experienced with their dreams, like people are experienced with their trips. It's weird. Like they've taught themselves how to remember them better. They've taught themselves how to go into a lucid dream almost every night. I have friends that just do whatever they want in their dreams. They say they can basically like kind of just do whatever they want. Every single dream they realize they're dreaming, and then at that moment they can just do whatever they want. And whether it's travel dimensions, travel space and time, whether it's just jump on the moon, whether it's just manifest ice cream out of nowhere, whether it's just, and I find dream states interesting. You know, I know people that have dreams about the future, and I find that interesting. I think it's all interesting because I think that we are higher dimensional beings, and I think, like you said, I think these things are more real than we really give them credit for, because
if you talk to shamans and all of these quote unquote masters who act, they're taking the shit very seriously. They're not just looking at it as a delusion inside of your mind. They do claim to speak to the spirit ancestors, and for some reason this shit just seems to work. It's not like some random ideology where you have to pray and hope that something happens. No, for some reason, this shit actually unfolds before your very eyes.
Yeah. I think these things are memory tools for us because humans forgot who we are. So I think Mother Nature leaves clues in the molecules, leaves information in the molecules, and because I think these plants are just different forms of consciousness. We're a form of consciousness, and animals are a form of consciousness, and we say we're smarter than the animals, and maybe we are, but I damn sure don't think we're smarter than the plants. I think the plants have an access to a higher realm on a daily basis. I think they're more in the higher realms than they are in this realm. Their 3D version is either like some plants are trees, some are mushrooms, or mushrooms aren't plants, but regardless, I think that these things, that's their third dimensional selves. But I think if you want to get to know their consciousness, which would be their higher dimensional self, you have to take the plants. With us, with humans, we're like walking, talking plants. We can, speak and talk and think, but we have molecules inside of us just like plants do, except plants run on different chemistry. They use, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the molecule, but I'll probably think of it as soon as it's the molecule that makes leaves green. I know there's going to be somebody that's watching this that knows exactly what I'm talking about, but the molecule that's in leaves that make it green is like only a step off of the molecule in our blood that makes our blood red. It's like they're related molecules. So I think plants are just a different form of life, a different form of consciousness, and Yeah,
and I also think that all individual plants have their own spirits inside of them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just like we do, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, unlike ayahuasca, where the entity actually presents itself to you, I do think that even though that entities are not presenting themselves to you under the influence of many other drugs, I still think that there is some sort of entity attached to it, whether it be heroin, DMT, ayahuasca, psilocybin mushrooms, even tobacco, because there's this idea that I heard that the spirit of tobacco is called the grandfather spirit.
Yeah, the Native Americans hold tobacco as one of their most sacred herbs.
Yeah, and the
it's-
fact that we are creating these cancer sticks right here, just it. I think that it is an insult to the spirit of tobacco, just for the simple fact that tobacco all by itself, I mean, it's bad for you, but it's nowhere damn near as bad as a fucking cigarette. A cigarette is more likely to cause cancer or cause other health problems than just pure tobacco or just pure nicotine for that matter.
Right. I also feel like the problem is that our society, and ever since, you know, our Western American world society started making cigarettes and started using tobacco, the Europeans that came over here, you know, we're such a money-based society that they came over here and basically looked for the one tobacco plant that grew the easiest so they can make the money from it. It grew quicker, it's this and that. But just because it grows quicker, just because it's easier, just because whatever, it doesn't make it better. We use a different plant technically because there's different strains of tobacco, you can say. And Native Americans use Nicotianica rustica, and I think we use Nicotianica tabacum, which is the form of tobacco that's in cigarettes. But you can buy Nicotianica rustica online, right? You can buy, Native American, they call it mapacho. But I think that has something to do with it. But I also feel like intention has a lot to do with it. We don't have, every American smokes cigarettes for the American reason. None of us, I see everyone around me, because I don't smoke cigarettes, so I've never smoked. I've never smoked. I smoked one cigarette when I was 14, but that was it. But like, it's just everyone around me, none of them are sitting there praising the tobacco before they smoke it, and like because the natives looked at it as a cleansing thing, not to cleanse them or not to, because a lot of people use cigarettes to relieve anxiety or relieve stress or whatever. Maybe it's like they need that breather for a second, that that thing. But Native American, in the shaman society's way, in their way of living, they didn't need it for that reason. They had multiple other, they had ayahuasca whenever they wanted, or whatever they needed to get rid of their anxiety. They used tobacco just to cleanse the energy, the air. It was very sacred. Like, they blow it into the pot while the smoke into the pot while they're brewing the ayahuasca. They just look at it. I think the way we view the substance also has a lot to do with what the substance will do, whether physically or experience wise.
Yeah, I like that right there. Whenever, like, I think that there should be more footage actually showing that, because it is very pretty the way that they do it. It's very beautiful whenever they're setting up their rituals and they're blowing the tobacco smoke before they have their ayahuasca ceremonies or peyote ceremonies. It just complements the experience that is about to come.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've always been into the way after Terence Mckenna and all that, shamanism is kind of really how I got deep into this, because shamanism is just researching shamanism and figuring out that it really is the first religion of every human being on this planet. You can say it's not just Native American thing. It was a everybody thing. Everybody at one point.
Shamanism is how Christianity was practiced for the first few thousand years.
Exactly. Because they use plants to connect to what they would call their God. There's no difference. Like, it's the same thing. I just think, over time, humans figured out information, hide information, and now here we are trying to reveal information. But because the truth is that religion is just expressing what psychedelics are trying to tell us anyways, but the story is so mixed up that because they don't talk to the original source, it's like a he say she say thing. I think the beauty about shamanism is you don't need a church. You connect to it yourself. You don't need to read somebody else's gospel when you can go through your own spiritual experience and write your own gospel. Because spiritual experiences are right here. Just a drink of ayahuasca away, or a smoke of DMT away, or it's right there in front of us. But religion tries to keep it away from us, so that's why I can.
Man, ayahuasca is fucking amazing, dude. Like,
Agreed.
I would wish that I had the experience so much further back in my life, but just looking at it, maybe it's best that I didn't and had other experiences beforehand, because leading up to that experience, maybe it just would have freaked me out. Whereas whenever I took it for the first time, I didn't freak out because of my previous experiences with DMT and psilocybin mushrooms. Because even though that I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into, those were kind of like small practices to get to that point. And it was one of the most profound experiences that I've ever had on a psychedelic aside from DMT.
It's interesting. Ayahuasca is an interesting thing. I've only done pharmahuasca, they call it. Well, it's Syrian root seeds, and then I took
Archaea something?
What?
Archaea.
The Latin name for Syrian root seeds?
No, it's the other substance that actually contains DMT.
Oh, well, see, what I took was just pure. I just took pure white crystalline powdered DMT. I just took 100 milligrams of pure white crystalline powdered DMT in a capsule. So I took 3 grams of Syrian root seeds, and
those have an MAOI in it, correct?
Yeah, the Syrian root seeds contain the MAOI, and then 30 minutes later, I took a capsule of 100 milligrams of DMT in it, and then that was basically ayahuasca. And in a way, it's not obviously ayahuasca, but it is, because it's the DMT and the MAOI, and it worked. It worked perfectly.
Acacia mimosa is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So this was from acacia. This was originally from acacia, so it probably contained small amounts of NMT as well, most likely, because the difference between Mimosa hostilis and Acacia confusa is that acacia contains NMT as well as DMT, but NMT only has a feel to it. It doesn't have any visuals to it. Because I have an extract, it's right on the other side of the table, that it's an acacia extract, but it doesn't contain DMT. It only contains NMT. So when I smoke it, it only has the feeling that DMT gives you without any visuals whatsoever. So like that, especially that peace feeling you get after you smoke DMT, and you're just like, just like this peace thing. But yeah.
So I know that you've had experiences with Salvia divinorum, but have you ever actually chewed salvia leaves?
I've never chewed salvia leaves, but I did do a salvia tincture. Okay, so the salvia tincture was salvia leaves soaked in alcohol.
Is that just salvinorin A concentrate?
Well, it's so it's kind of basically, but it's basically they take the salvia leaves and they soaked it in alcohol for a long time, and it was like really, really concentrated because it was dark as fuck. Like it was really, really, really dark, and kind of, it was alcohol, but yeah, it was kind of thick from all the extract that was in the alcohol. But my friend gave it to me because he said it was like right after meeting him, we had some trips together. We realized we had psychedelics in common, and we realized there's very few people around in our area that we can trip with that actually take psychedelics seriously. He said he had no interest in it, so he gave me a vial and said, "Here you go. This is some salvia tincture." I was like, "What do you do with it?" Because at this point I was so uneducated that like I didn't know what the fuck to do with it. I was like, "What the hell is a tincture?" So he explained to me what a tincture is and all this other shit, and then he explained to me you gotta hold it in your mouth because salvia, the molecule doesn't really work unless it's held in the mouth, and then you can either spit it out after you hold it in your mouth or you can swallow it. It's up to you. So I experimented with that tincture.
Is it stronger if you do swallow it because it's going into your gut?
Yes. I don't know if it's because it's going to the gut, because I feel like it almost works too fast for it to just because it was going to the gut, but maybe. But I only had like 1 or 2 really good experiences with it, and now that you meant, those were the experiences where I did decide to swallow it in my gut. The rest of the experiences were just like this nice trippy colors brighten, I guess, and like just a nice trippy feeling, vibe, love, connection feeling. Much different than smoking salvia. Smoking salvia was the first
It's
psychedelic.
very uncomfortable.
It was shitty. But the real experience, the best experience I had with the salvia tincture was I was on my back porch and I was just sitting there smoking, dabbing out. And I was like, I'm bored. So I just decided to take out the salvia tincture, and I took, I think it was 2 or 3 full dropperfuls. Okay. So I held 2 dropperfuls in my mouth for 15 minutes and then swallowed it, and then held another dropper in my mouth, 1 dropper full for 5 minutes, and swallowed that. I'm pretty sure I swallowed that. I don't know if I swallowed the last one or not. I don't remember. But I ended up just sitting, I was in a chair, so I ended up just sitting in the chair, and I thought I was just high off the wax. I just thought I'm like, man, that was some good wax or something. I started feeling my body, started feeling like this, like just this feeling like started like coming up to me like this in a way. Like it was like I don't know how to explain it, but it was a nice feeling, a nice, beautiful, comfortable feeling like you're being wrapped. And then I started like kind of like, not necessarily getting drowsy, but like dozing in and out of consciousness, but kind of like having visions behind my eyes, flashes, images of something that I couldn't explain. And then I just open my eyes and be like, oh shit, okay. So I like positioned myself in my chair correctly so I didn't fall off the chair, because at this point I've already had experiences with DMT, so I knew that, you know, psychedelics, I didn't know where it was gonna go, because I didn't know where this could go. I didn't know salvia, at this point I didn't know molecules were different based on how you ingested them. So I was expecting it to be like a mild version of smoked salvia, just like DMT is a more intense version of like ayahuasca. I expected it to be similar to that. And it wasn't really. It was completely different. I started feeling flashes, and I'm in this chair, and like I'm like just sitting there having flashes, and then all of a sudden I see trees. I see trees, and then I start to see a flash again. I see grass, but the grass was like size difference. Like right now I look at grass and it's really small. From this point of view, I was looking at grass and it was ginormous. It was pretty big. And then I started realizing that I was moving weird, and I kept my eyes closed, and that's when I really got into it. And I became a butterfly. I realized that I was a butterfly flying in this field that had never been touched by human beings ever. It's like it took me back in time somewhere, and I was a butterfly, and I was flying, just living my life as a butterfly, being free as a fucking butterfly, and I landed on a flower, and I'm pretty sure it was a yellow flower, and like it was just the most interesting experience. That's one of the most interesting experiences I've had on psychedelics. Well, interesting as in I've never had an experience like that ever again, where I became an animal per se, where I was an insect or I was this thing. Like I lost sense of being in the chair at that point, you know, and just realized that I was the butterfly, and I was just the butterfly. I was just doing what butterflies do, and thinking whatever butterflies think, and just being whatever butterflies be. And then after finding this field for a little bit, I just came out of it, and I was like, wow, that was a weird, beautiful experience. And after that, I didn't have enough salvia tincture again to do that again. After I realized, basically I fucked with the salvia tincture the whole time, trying to figure out how to get it to work. I finally figured out how to get it to work, and I ran out of it, and I haven't had any since. But yeah.
So I guess now the real question is, did you have a dreamlike experience where you were a butterfly, or are you the butterfly now dreaming that you're a human?
Oh. Fuck yeah.
So there's something that I wanted to talk about. I'm pretty sure that eventually I'll have someone else on the show that I can talk with them about this as well. But I haven't met anybody that has been interested in this particular topic. You have taken a lot of LSA in your life.
Yeah. You know, it's so crazy saying my life. Really, it's in the last 3 months. But yeah.
Wow.
I first
Well,
tried LSA on Christmas of 2019.
do you prefer LSA or LSD?
That's hard. Damn. That's a hard one. Honestly, LSA. To be honest, yeah, LSA.
I could possibly say LSA if it wasn't for the nausea that I get from it.
I've learned to kind of accept that that's its personality. I've learned to kind of accept that that's a part of it showing you that it's not a party thing. It kind of forces...
That's a good way to put it.
It forces me to take it seriously. Like, it puts up a no shit. Like, I think it's kind of similar to ayahuasca, where it takes no shit.
I was just about to say that.
And I've compared, a lot of people that I know compare LSA to LSD and say, oh, it's like a natural version of LSD. And I would almost say it's almost like a weaker version of ayahuasca in a sense, where it's like not as visual. And if you have visions on LSA, they're not as clear. They're kind of foggy. But it's more like spiritual that way because it does make you nauseous. Now, I've only thrown up on it twice. I've done it about 60 to 70 times within the past 3 months. Okay, so I guess maybe, it's been 3 months. It was 3 months on the 25th. But yeah, so my experiences with it are interesting. Now, I've had so many experiences with it in a small amount of time because that's what I like to do with plants and new things that I try. It's not just psychedelics. It's like I did it when I first tried motherwort. I did it when I first tried blue lotus. I did it when I first tried kratom. I did it like every herb that I've tried over the years. I did it when I first tried chaga. All these herbs I ended up doing back to back to back as many times as my mind and body felt comfortable doing, just so I can get to know the plant. Like, my intention is never to just trip balls and have fun necessarily, even though every experience I'm having the time of my fucking life. It doesn't matter if I'm nauseous, throwing up, vomiting, screaming, crying. I'm having the time of my life because I'm free. So it's like I'm just being. There is, you're just being. But LSA is an interesting substance because it's my favorite out of the lysergamites, right? Like, so like LSD is interesting. LSD is beautiful, magical, more visual. It doesn't make you nauseous, but it lacks wisdom. It has a lot of wisdom, but it lacks this ancient wisdom that LSA seems to be able to access. A lot of these older psychedelics, it's like they're able to
LSD has always been a lot more personal for me, whereas LSA, it's personal, but it goes far beyond that, to the point of showing me things about reality, the universe, my own history in a sense, but not really. It gets a lot deeper and a lot more complex than LSD, because LSD it's a lot more like personal therapy, whereas LSA is more, I guess, like you're saying, it provides more ancient wisdom than LSD does.
Yeah, and I think it's only because LSD is young. And I think that molecules, they are like humans, except extremely, extremely, extremely older and can live much, 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 much longer. So it's like I think LSD is still in its child stages. Like, it's like, I think there's Albert Hoffman naming his book LSD My Problem Child is a good example. It's a perfect way to put it, because LSD has more of like a child, playful fun to it than other psychedelics. It doesn't go as deep because it hasn't had much time to gain wisdom. I mean, it was just created in the 1930s. So like, it hasn't even had 150 years yet to build information.
Whereas like thousands of fucking years.
Exactly. And even LSA, because LSA was used by the Aztec, the Mazatec, and the Mayans in the Morning Glories. And the Hunna tribe, which was like Attila the Hun, which the people that conquered over in Asia, their tribe, whatever, there was a Hunter tribe that used to experiment with Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds. Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds has very little shamanic usage besides the Hunter tribe, and then in Hawaii, the poor people would use the seeds as a cheap legal way to get high. But it's interesting because the experience is just so deep. I've learned with garlic, you can kind of mask the nausea a little bit. I use just garlic powder, mix it with some water, shake it in a bottle, put some garlic water in there, and it doesn't add to the flavor, obviously, but I'm not really into the flavor. I never eat the seeds. I only brew it. Like, I don't brew it necessarily like it's a cold water brew, where you just take the water, you crush the seeds up, you put the seeds in the water, you let them
cold
sit
water
there.
extraction method.
Yeah, and let them sit there for like 5 hours. Sometimes I prefer to let them sit there for 3 days. 3 days, you let them sit in the bottle you put the bottle in the back of the fridge for 3 days. And I prefer that. Now, I've even waited until it fermented and tested what it would be like if it was fermented. Like, would it make me vomit more? Would I get really sick? I wonder what type of bacteria would grow in there. Like, is it good? All these thoughts going through my head. But like, and it was just sitting in the fridge for like 6 days or so, 6 or 7 days, maybe even 8 days. But so it was kind of like a little vinegary tasting when I tasted it that time. But it's just, it worked every time. It doesn't really matter. It's just the longer it sits, I feel like the more the LSA actually absorbs into the water. And eventually, like, I prefer it when it's a nice dark brown, because after you wait two days or so, it starts getting dark brown. But if you only wait like 5 hours, it's not really dark brown as much as it's like tan-ish brown color. But I always add garlic into it, because garlic is a vasodilator, and LSA can cause vasoconstriction. So I figured garlic should.
And that is why you ended up that is why you stopped taking it, right?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you a story actually of exactly why I stopped. But like, because literally 2 weeks ago, I was stopping LSA, and now I'm taking a break for a while, maybe for 6 months, could be up to a year. But I'm gonna take a break because it started causing vasoconstriction in my arm, to the point where days later I still felt this like feeling in my arm that's like pressure. It's hard to explain, but that was after, so Thursday or Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so 3 or 4 days of basically using Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds every day. I don't recommend this, right? This is just what I was doing. This just 2 weeks ago. So it's like I took 10 seeds, and then Thursday, and 10 seeds I've noticed is the dose where I prefer to. That's where visuals happen behind my eyes the best. Any more than that, my mind starts to wink out a little. It's because the madness of the mind in the LSA is interesting. It's like the visuals are barely there, but the mindset's there. It's just like the mindset of LSD. If you take 5 hits of LSD, you're in a certain mindset. If you take, if I took 10 seeds of Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds, I'm in a similar mindset. Just way lack of visuals in that sense, but way more closed eye visuals. So like Thursday, I just had an experience, and what's interesting is the experience was the first time I seen a tryptamine world type thing in LSA. Usually LSA shows me like visions of the future. It'll flash like visions of the future, of moments in this human world, of things that will happen in the future. Every time it's done that, these things have happened though. So I am definitely a believer in psychedelics, as in the shamans weren't crazy when they said they had visions of the future, when they said they had this or that. They had the help of plants to do so. So it's like, I usually have visions of the future. But then this thing took me through, it had flashes of the future. I was at my job, because I'm a store clerk, so I was at my job, and I had to wear masks. And this is before we had to wear masks. It was mandatory to wear those face masks at the job. So I remember looking at my coworker and wondering why I couldn't see the bottom half of her face, but I could see the upper half of her face, and she has pink hair, so I could see that it was her pink hair, so I knew it was her. And then it's like LSA was trying to warn me about some, I guess, some traumatic shit that happened in my life like recently. And, you know, I'm not traumatic, I guess. It's just family issues, I guess you can say. But it's like LSA was trying to warn me about everything that was about to happen before it happened. And then it happened the next day after that Thursday. It happened on Friday. And then, no, it happened that Thursday because I had that experience was even before I went to work. Okay, so that experience was right before I went to work. Then I went to work, came home, found out, you know, my girlfriend wasn't there. So, because we got in an argument. So I was there alone from Thursday night until Sunday. And I just went in. Like, I was like, fuck it, whatever. And I'm just going to travel the spirit world for a little while. So I just did 10 seeds Thursday. I did 15 seeds on Friday, Friday night after work. I did Saturday. No, Friday in the morning I did 5 seeds, and then I did 10 seeds, and I did 15 seeds at night, and then Saturday morning I took another like 2 or 3 seeds, and then at night I took 20 seeds on Saturday night. And then Saturday night, it was like midnight when I took the 20 seeds. No, it was 11 o'clock when I took the 20 seeds because I remember 1 hour was, 1 in the morning was like 2 hours later. So
in other words, you're fucking crazy. Okay.
Hold on. I'm almost done. And then that Saturday, that Saturday night after taking the 20 seeds, that Sunday morning, I woke up. So I took the 20 seeds 11 o'clock at night on Saturday. And then Sunday morning, I wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning and I take another 10 seeds, 9 in the morning. And at this point, so the 9 in the morning one, I ended up, I was out of it, bro. I was so into that world that I forgot. I was just losing myself. So I was I stripped naked and I started running around my house, dancing to the music. And luckily I was the only one in my house. But, so I'm just dancing to the music, running around naked, just dancing to the music. And I almost went outside in the middle of the day naked. And I did this the night prior as well. I did this the night prior where I stripped naked and danced around and fucking almost went outside and ran down the street naked because I just wanted to go outside and feel Mother Nature. I wanted to feel closer to Mother Nature because I was in my house. But it just, then as I got closer to the door, me was telling me go back in the bedroom. So I went back in the bedroom and I shut the door and I told myself, you're not going to leave this bedroom. And because for me, the nausea of LSA only lasts 45 minutes to an hour. After 45 minutes to an hour, I'm able to jump around, dance around, and move. Because after that, the experiences with LSA, these back-to-back, by the time Saturday hit, I didn't even feel any nausea really. But and I took 20 seeds on Saturday. That Saturday, and it's I didn't even really feel nauseous at all because it's my body was getting immune or used to the fact that it was taking this molecule that was making me nauseous, so it was getting used to it, so it stopped making me nauseous. So by the time I did it Sunday, I wasn't nauseous at all. I was just running around doing my thing. And then Sunday I ended up going to my mom's house, and then I ended up staying at my mom's house or whatever. But what's so crazy is Sunday when I went to my mom's house, I couldn't really speak. I don't know how to explain it. After going 3-4 days without human contact and just constantly in the tryptamine world, getting visions of the future and flashes in the tryptamine dimension, going through a tryptamine vortex, and I went through this colorful vortex that was tie-dye colored. It looked different than the DMT vortex. It looked similar to the DMT vortex, except the colors were different. It was tie-dyed in different sections, red, orange, blue, purples, as you started getting farther down the tunnel. And then it repeated that whatever. And it's it went all through the colors, and I started flying through it. But after that, coming back, could barely speak.
Yeah, it is like whenever you have an extremely high dose of LSD, and then once the trip comes down, like, you have all of this shit inside of your mind, but you just can't fucking talk or speak it.
Well, for me, after that weekend, though, it wasn't just all the stuff in my mind. It's all the stuff that wasn't in my mind. And that's why
fascinating.
That's why I kind of took a break. That's why I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lay off the sauce for a while. I think I've gotten a lot of information out of LSA. I still have, like, right now I could make probably 10 trip reports off of it right now. Many, experiences I've had with it. So I was like, I'm gonna lay off the sauce, because it was the lack of, it wasn't that, it was just the weirdness of this world. At this point, coming back from a weekend like that, at that point, I was just like, this speaking out of my mouth was weird, because I didn't really talk much the whole weekend, because nobody was there to talk to but me. So it was just me and the psychedelic, and most of the talks that I had with the psychedelic was in my head. So, like, coming out to speak English, to speak in general, was like, I almost forgot how to speak. Like, I almost forgot how to human, how to just, I don't know.
You had to reintegrate yourself back into this reality to be human.
Yeah, because days after that, I still, like, had experiences with walls and colors still would, like, the walls would still breathe, and things like this would still morph and move. And for a while, and like I said, this is just 2 weeks ago. So, like, that part of it just ended like a week ago. Like, a week ago, I finally, the walls right now don't look like they're slightly breathing, or they don't look, a white wall doesn't look like it's just this giant colorful TV fuzz. Because some people would call that HPPD. And that's technically what that is. Like, if you go to a therapist or a psychologist, and if I told him my weekend, he would say, you gave yourself HPPD.
Hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. For those of you who do not know, HPPD can be caused in people after they have had very, very intense psychedelic experiences, where whenever they come down from those experiences, they're still pretty much tripping all of the time.
Yeah, but that was me. That was me literally a week ago. Where I was, like, still just in it, almost. Like, what's interesting, though, is I think psychedelics change the mind, or they give you the option to change the mind. They can't do anything without your permission. But, like, I gave the LSA permission to change me, because during this process, so even before that weekend, I was doing LSA every other day. So that was the problem. Before that weekend, I was doing the seeds every other day, and I was microdosing with them as well. The week before that, I wanted to experiment all aspects of it, from extremely low doses to high doses. I microdosed on it, and I went to work. I did this. Now, what's crazy about LSA, I wouldn't even have the job right now if I didn't do all this. Like, me doing my experiences with LSA are the thing that told me to get a fucking job. It's like, you want your life together, you want this, you want to start a business. Like, I had no money for weed at this time in my life. Like, I had no money for weed, I barely had money for food, and this is like a month and a half ago or so. It's like I was running so low on everything. Everything was running thin. I got kids, I got this, I got that. Everything was just running so thin. And the LSA was kind of like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It was just like, are you look at what's in front of you. You want this thing in the future here. So what steps do you need to take to get there? It's like the LSA was just trying to show me with these visions, and what it was trying to show me with all these things is it was showing me the steps. I was just getting awestruck that a Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds LSA was giving me visions of the future. And Terence Mckenna described it as, don't give yourself away to astonishment. And LSA, with no matter what psychedelic it is, sometimes I just give my way up to astonishment. It's because it's astonishing. But because it was astonishing going through this experience and learning through LSA and learning through all these things.
Don't give way to astonishment. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Exactly. And it's hard to pay attention to LSA because the visions you get on LSA, I'm seeing visions of the future. I'm seeing the tryptamine world. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing space. I've traveled through space before. I've been all on LSA now, but it's all foggy. It's like looking through, tryptamines are like looking at an object and it's there. Like it's just there. LSA is like looking at that object through like blurry glass, or looking through that object through like a veil, or through like looking at it through like moving water. It's just foggy. It's hard to see clearly, but it's like if I just stuck a foggy piece of plastic in front of my face and tried looking at the camera, I could see you still, but like it would be a little foggier than if I removed the plastic. And that's what LSA visions have been for me. Just all like kind of foggy, but I've learned to see through the fog, and I've learned to just kind of look and pay attention. And I always use a blindfold. You know, most of my experiences with LSA has always been a blindfold at some point. Right after the nausea, I usually just put a blindfold on and go into it. And if the LSA experience is a different experience where it's not a closed eye experience, because sometimes I've taken it and there is no closed eye visuals, then I just observe what else is there. I observe, and because that's the thing, I'm tripping to learn from this thing. So what does it do to music? What does it do to vision? What does it do to thought? What does it do to the imagination? So I'll play different songs, learn, can I dance? Can I move? Does it do this? What does it do to my personality? Am I more loose? Am I more comfortable speaking? Am I more, a lot of psychedelics make me more elf-like, more jester-like. I feel more jestery when I'm on a psychedelic, but I also feel a little more sillier when I'm high off weed. Like, if I wasn't high right now, I feel like the conversation might have been a little boring, or I might have explained this a little nervous-wise, or differently, because weed, substances just, they affect your consciousness a little bit. I would say it's just an interesting thing. Funny thing is about Hawaiian baby woodrose, because most of my experiences were with Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds. Over the past 3 months, I've only had one experience with morning glories, where I took 250 morning glory seeds. But Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds is just easier because you only have to take a smaller dose, and it's easier to get, and they're about the same price, so it's cheap as fuck, and so it doesn't really matter. And but yeah, I could speak about LSA for forever because that's the most recent thing in my head. Like the other experiences with psychedelics was like a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 6 years ago. LSA was 2 weeks ago, and that was the freshest thing on my mind. And I would have thought that, I don't know, maybe some people in my life might have thought that I was doing them too much. Like a lot of people think, I was doing them too much, or why do you need to do it that much? And it's because I'm exploring. Like, I'm learning. I'm trying to gather information and express it out. Like, I'm just trying to learn about this substance, learn what it did to me, and maybe it can do it to maybe it does the same thing to somebody else. But I'll never know unless I put the information out that, well, I took this substance and it gave me visions of the future on multiple occasions. So it's just interesting. And it's more spiritual. I guess the last thing I'll say about LSA is it's just more spiritual. It's just more, in my opinion, it's more spiritual than LSD because it connects me more to the same thing that DMT connects me to than LSD does. Like, it's just more to that real thing.
So going back to the topic of LSA, do you prefer Argyrin nervosa or morning glory seeds?
Definitely Argyrin nervosa, Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds. I guess I'm interested in morning glories because there was like this Aztec type vibe to it. There was like, the visuals of it were slightly different than the Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds. But when doing research, you see that the molecules in it are slightly different. You also see that LSA, a lot of the effects of these seeds come from LSA, LSH, and a few other ergomites. And morning glories contain ergomites that are not in or lysergamides, or whatever people prefer to call them, but that are not in Hawaiian baby wood seeds. So because they're not in Hawaiian baby wood seeds, this is why there's a slight difference in the effects. The effects tend to just have this I don't know, when you look at somebody when you're on Hawaiian baby wood seeds, it's just, there's like this glow in a way, and the glow's just not there when you're like, when you're on morning glories. It wasn't there. There's not as much patterning on Hawaiian baby wood seeds as there is on morning glories. That's what I meant by the Aztec vibe. There's like a Aztec vibe to it where it was like patterning, and it just felt like it had a little more history to it. That's what interested me, I guess, in it. The closed eye visuals were a little different, like seeing rips and portals, and it took me to typical time thing, but just different. And I thought that it was interesting that it was even the slightest amount of different, because I figured, it contains LSA, but it also has other things in it that make it slightly different.
See, I one time had this experience on LSD where I was walking down my neighborhood and on the concrete on the road, and all of the concrete was spiraling into itself. But the little bumps that separate the road from each yard where your car goes up?
Yeah.
Those little bumps right there, I started seeing these geometric patterns folding into themselves that were being harnessed by these hieroglyphic-like, Egyptian-like images. So I found that interesting. Yeah. Have you ever had an experience on Salvia where it completely dissolved your... Have you ever had an experience on Salvia that was so life-changing that you felt like you shouldn't take psychedelics for a long time, not because it scared you, but simply because the message was so powerful and so strong that you needed to integrate it for a long-ass time before ever doing anything else?
My first psychedelic experience, I guess you can say, my first psychedelic experience was, with Salvia, and that was totally, it scared me away from psychedelics completely. I just said, fuck that. But what's so crazy is I thought it was fake weed. Like, I didn't know anything about psychedelics back then. I didn't know what anything was. All I knew was I turned 18. And
you thought it was synthetic marijuana?
I thought it was something similar, maybe a little more intense, because I've smoked synthetic cannabis. I was smoking synthetic cannabis at this time around, as well as regular weed. But I was just experimenting with certain things at this time. And I started just going to the head shop and buying certain different, smokable, fake cannabises and different things. I smoked this one called Bizarro that was not like fake cannabis. That shit had me running across the street in like this weird pacing. It was not like weed. And that made me think, well, if I can handle that, I can handle anything. So then I got into Salvia. I thought Salvia was just some fake weed, similar to all that, maybe a little more intense. But then once I realized it was really way more intense, I said, fuck that. But after that, 2 years later is when I did DMT. But after that, it made me question, what is Salvia? Why did it do that? It took me out of it disconnected me so much that I couldn't do anything. It was so intense. But I just, after that I threw the Salvia away too. It's funny. It was a full candy. It was a full jar thing. And I just, took that one time of me using it. And it was like a nice like $40, $50 jar thing of it. And like, I just threw the whole thing in the garbage and said, fuck that shit. I don't know why the fuck that's legal. Like, I was like, fuck that. And then 2 years later, getting the psychedelics. But, and then after that, I've only had smoked Salvia 3 times. That's it, though. Because the second time was the same thing. Scary, shitty, uncomfortable, fuck that. And I only did the second time because I had multiple experiences with DMT. And so I figured, well, maybe I can handle salvia this time. I was like, no, it's still bullshit and uncomfortable, and I can't learn shit from it. So yeah, salvia is every time.
Salvia is one hell of a drug. I've had some of the worst experiences on salvia, but at the same time, I've also had some of the best experiences on salvia.
What do you mean by that?
I've had salvia experiences that scarred me for life. Well, not for life, but for a very, very long time that made me never want to touch it again. But at the exact same time, I've also had experiences with salvia that were borderline DMT-like. Like, there's this one experience, I've talked about it many times on my channel, but it's just one of my favorite experiences that I've had on salvia because it is the one that I identify salvia with. And I had went into the woods and I had either 25 or 40X. And I loaded an entire bowl into my pipe, and I cashed that in about 2 hits, held both hits in for about 10, 15, 20-ish seconds each. And I was sitting in a meditative position on the ground, and something just forced me to open up my eyes. And all of the trees in the woods became one single tree. I don't mean like reality collapsed into one tree. I mean like all of the trees became one tree. All of the dirt was still everywhere. So the ground was still there, but all of the trees became one tree. And then that tree started to manifest into this bright ass light. And from that light, there manifested this even brighter light. And it was this entity that was also that was made of just pure vibrant light. And from its forehead shot this white line directly into my forehead. And at this moment, I start seeing everything around me, like all 360 degrees, as though there were like cameras going all around. Like it was seeing everything 360 degrees all at once. And from that moment, it basically felt like my third eye was peeking open temporarily until I fell back into the state of meditation. And I was probably sitting there for like a good 30, 40 minutes, and I'm listening to Tool at the time. And after I got up, I went and I walked back around, and I went over to my friend's house, and I tried to explain the experience to him, but he's not a psychedelic person, so I just came off as a crazy person to him.
As we usually do when we try to explain it to somebody.
Yeah, because it either comes out like we're lying or it just sounds like we're fucking crazy. When in all actuality, whenever you have the experience for yourself, it completely changes your view on everything.
Yeah, it just changes your view on reality. You know, but it also transforms you. You know, a teenager, our teenage selves wouldn't be able to understand the world we live right now. Our teenage selves think that when we are this age that we will be, things will be different, like we'll be in more control of our life, or things like we just don't understand, you know, the more we evolve. And I think psychedelics, and this is just my personal belief, but I personally believe that a human being is not grown until they've had a psychedelic experience.
Yep, I was actually just about to say that because the first time that I had a psychedelic experience, I was about 16 or 17, and I feel like that was the transforming moment in my life that transcended me from being just this closed-minded, egotistical, self-absorbed, narcissistic child to actually being a lot more mature than I was beforehand, and actually understanding my mind on a much deeper level. And that led me to bonding with people around me on a much deeper level. I was a much better person. I was able to grow from that, and I was able to understand myself on a much deeper level than I ever had beforehand. Because before I ever took psychedelics, I was like fucking borderline, what's the word? Not psychopathic, but
Psychotic? I don't know. Because I've been there. I don't know, before psychedelics, I was going down a dark path in life. So I feel you.
Yeah, It's amazing how psychedelics can really open you up and show you yourself on such a deep level that nothing else can really do that.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that a lot of people will say, oh, well, psychedelics aren't. And to a certain degree, I kind of have to disagree, just because I think that they can provide answers that you're not going to find anywhere else.
Yeah.
And they can open you up in ways that nothing else will allow you to do.
Right, though. I've thought that, where it's like, I think, I forget who it was. Somebody just recently I was talking to as a friend came over, and I was just explaining, my experiences, kind of like I just explained to you, my weekend and shit, where it's like, it's like experiences like that. I was explaining to him, and he was like, well, why do you need to do that? I'm like, I wanted to learn. I was getting advice. He was like, why don't you ask somebody for advice? I'm like, I want advice from something that's not necessarily human. Like the advice that psychedelics give, even though a lot of it's common sense from a dramatic experience perspective, where the psychedelics are so dramatic, meaning like they're like so there, they put you there, and it's like they could just be like, hey, be a nicer person, get your life together, trips over. But it's like, instead they're like, here's the boom, and it's just like life shattering. And but
I think that one thing that a lot of people need to realize about psychedelics, that a lot of people, for some reason, even to this day, don't understand, is the fact that these are not drugs that you can get high on. Psychedelics do not get you high. These are boundary-dissolving, life-changing, therapeutic, incredibly intense, and I don't like using this word because everybody has a different vision of what this word means, but spiritual sacraments. These are things that open you up to whole other realities, can put you into whole other dimensions. It can open you up to aspects of yourself that you never knew about. It can help you to evolve language, creativity, and just overall better yourself and help you to better those around you, even those who aren't on psychedelics. Because some of the messages that I've gotten from psychedelics, after implementing them into myself, I've been able to share with other people, and that helped them to evolve as an individual as well.
yeah, I agree. I've been able to like kind of do the same, right? And it's weird that some things that the psychedelics can teach you, you can give to other people without them even needing to use the psychedelic.
Yep.
It's interesting.
It is almost as though the spirits of those psychedelics are somehow possessing you, and you are able to download the information that has been downloaded into you into other people.
Yeah, right. And continue that process, like the ripple effect. It's like you're rippling out your ideas. And I think that it's like we have intentions, we have goals, we have certain things we want. And I think that these psychedelics have their own goals and their own things that they want. And like you said, like I generally think it is like that. It's like they're possessing us or channeling through us their ideas and their things, and we get downloaded with this shit, and it's like then we want to talk about it because it's like the most intense thing that's ever happened to us in our life. We're like, oh my God. So of course you want to express it to your neighbors and your friends and family, and half of them, like 90% of them are gonna be like, you're crazy. Like, this is just some crazy talk. You're just doing drugs. But few of them will listen. Like I've had a few people that don't do psychedelics generally listen. Like I have one friend who he's just a college educated type of guy. He has a master's degree. He educated in that aspect of life. So like he likes to hear about situations and just hear about my trips. And eventually me and my friends finally got him to trip, at least have an LSD experience. But it's like, it's just these experiences are interesting. You find few people that are interested for different reasons, but I think that these things have their own agenda, just like we have an agenda. And if we can somehow combine our agendas, combine human beings, combine their agendas with the plants, it's like, then we can make magic in the world. I think the main problem is that we're not connected enough. But it's crazy. We live in a world where we're so damn connected that we can do this, but we're not connected enough where we can, I don't know, connect to the plant. We're disconnected from the plants. We're connected to the internet. And I think that we need to, like, to get to the society where we need to go to, I think we need to get to the point where we're connected with the plants and connected with the internet, using technology and the internet, having them both side by side, yin and yang. It's like this balance, because I generally believe technology would not be here if Mother Nature didn't want it here. Because people have this confusion that technology is not organic. Well, did we get these products from Mars? If it's not organic, then where did it come from? Everything that I'm using right now on this computer came from Earth. Came from Earth, like all of it. And you can say that the programs in the computer didn't come from Earth, but they did, because they came from our brain, which then therefore came from the Earth. It's all us. It's all it. It's all it's all organic. It's all the planet, this higher consciousness thing trying to work itself out, because I just don't think we understand our place yet, which is why we're so off balance as a species on this planet. Because like you were saying earlier, it's like we're like the only animal that we just don't fit in. We just don't fit in as animals. Like, we're the only animal that fights. We're the only animal that has war like the way we do now. Other animals have war, but not war over, like, I don't know. We just have this different way of doing things because I think we forgot our place in history. But that can get into a whole nother span of like some deep fucking conspiracy theory shit about like Anunnaki and all this other shit. You can go on forever with that shit because the rabbit hole goes so deep, much farther than psychedelics. You know what I mean? But it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, many different people will say that there are many different reasons that we have war, but I think that there's only one main reason why we actually have war, and that is because of an unhealthy ego. I'm not saying that the ego in itself is a bad thing, because we do need an ego for our self-sense of identification. But whenever you have an unhealthy ego, then that leads to not only personal problems, but problems in general.
Yeah. I think the problem is our ego is out of control. Our society today is ego is more ego than consciousness. So it's like, I think we need to get to a point where our consciousness is stronger than our ego. Still keep the ego. Because I went through on this whole psychedelic journey. About 3 years into it, I was believing that I should kill the ego. So if you go back 3 years in my videos, you'll hear me talking about, I need to kill the ego, get rid of the ego, kill the ego. But it's like now, I'm more like, I understand that we need to tame the ego. We need to tame the beast inside. Tame our beast and use that shit. Because I believe you can use the darkness to find the light. I believe that you can use your darkness as motivation. The hard times, the sadness, the dark, the anger, all the things that people would say are negative, which stems from the ego. The thing that wants us to possess, the thing that wants us to control, the ego, we can use that. Like, we use it because we're using the ego right now. We don't even know it. We're using a slight part of the ego to even record a video of ourselves. Like I remember I was talking to, I think, my friend Phi, because I was trying to get him to make a YouTube channel. He finally did. But I was just trying to explain this, and it was like, it's interesting because it's like we need ego to even want to make videos. Like, what makes us so special that we're going to make a video and people are going to watch it? That's an ego. And our ego thinks that we have something valuable to say. It's not the consciousness that thinks it has something valuable to say necessarily. It's more that the ego is like, I believe in myself enough to know that this is whatever. But as long as you have both parties agreeing, then you're good. But if you're only having the ego agree and the consciousness doesn't agree, then that's most likely, that's where you get self-centered, egotistical type of people, who are just ego all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's who they are, because I have a lot of friends, like I don't know, I guess you can call them acquaintances realistically, but like, it's just a lot of people I know And this one guy that I know, I've known him for years, he's like the strictest business type of guy. And like, he's just really egotistical business type of guy. That's just who he is though. He's accepted that. He's even researched the Tao and meditation and psychedelics and all this other shit. And still, that's who he is, whatever. You know, psychedelics have kind of pushed me towards more who I am, which in a sense, I've learned to tame my ego. I've learned not to get rid of it. I used to let people walk all over me because I wanted to get rid of the ego, and I just wanted to be a nice psychedelic person. I don't know how to explain it. It's weird. Like when you're in the middle of changing, when you start using psychedelics and you're like beginning to find yourself and just find out, like the way I talk, the way I walk, the way I move, the way I think, all these things that have happened to me in my past, you start finding out things about reality. And it's like, man, that shit was done to me and I can undo it if I choose to. And it's like just an extremely long process. And in the beginning, you just, don't see. And so many people, what I've noticed is so many people are on different parts of the journey. And, it's okay if you're in the beginning steps of the journey or if you're on the middle, the end. There is no end, realistically. I feel like I don't think we're done with the journey until death. And even after that, I don't think the journey's over. I think the journey's just beginning. I think if this is only the third dimension, like we're in the third dimension because we're third dimensional beings, and it's a third dimensional world. So if death just takes us to the higher dimensions, a higher dimension up, does death have a death? And does death's death have a death? And is it like a constant? And I've always thought psychedelics have just kind of shown me over the years, and DMT has kind of shown me over the years that death's a process, life's a process, reality's a process, psychedelics are a process. Like use psychedelics once doesn't mean that you're an expert. Even if you've used them, if you use psychedelics 1,000 times, that doesn't make you an expert.
I think it is a little egotistical for somebody to call themselves a psychedelic expert.
Right, though, because I don't think you're ever an expert. I don't think, like, I was trying to explain this to my daughter earlier, like, because, kids think...
She's 9, right?
Yeah, kids think you're the shit, right? Kids think you're a god, like, because...
Oh, especially if you're like me doing fucking magic tricks for them, they're like, oh god.
right. Like with me, it's just like I'm basically me all the time. So it's like, I don't know, I'm always into like learning quantum physics and quantum mechanics and molecules and this and that. And she's observed that. So it's like she thinks I'm all smart, and I was explaining to her I don't know anything. She's like, what do you mean? Like, you know so much. I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, I genuinely know not, like, as much as I know. It's so crazy. I explained it with a fucking spoon, right? I explained it. I had a spoon. I'll use a pick. I was like, all right, so if, this is where I'm at, I understand about this much of the thing. There's still this whole entire thing that I don't understand. So therefore I know nothing. Because as much as I think I know, I can get a little farther and still not know. Get a little farther and still not know. Because even when I'm 90 years old, I will still know nothing. Because when I'm 90 years old, the understanding of our reality that we're in today will be completely different. The technologies, the virtual realities, the AI, the understanding of all these things will be there. And a lot of fear will go away. We'll understand molecules more and receptors of the brain more. And there'll be things that I won't understand when I'm 90, and I won't be able to keep up. So like I'm gonna be like, I'm dumb as fuck. I don't understand this shit. But yet it's like that's the point. Scientists do the same thing. A scientist is always trying to be proved wrong in a way where it's like it's just trying to do good science.
Well, that is one of the things that I have to give to science is the fact that one of the key foundations in it is the fact that they're always questioning everything. And if you can, if you have built up this argument for like 10 years and you're able to deconstruct it 10 years later and just say, you know what, I was wrong, they actually applaud you for that.
Yeah, and that happens so often in science. Sometimes in science, you'll have somebody that works on something their whole entire life since they were 18 years old, and they're now in their 60s, and then some young 20-year-old new scientist proves them wrong. And then what do they do with that? it's like either a lot of scientists that at that point in their life, it's hard for them to accept, but they kind of feel like their life is a waste. But it's not though, because because it's all steps to get closer to what is actually going on, and that's why I said nobody really has the answer. We're all just kind of working together to get the answer, and we all have a piece to the puzzle. And if we do end up getting answers, I think we should put those answers out. I think, like, imagine how many people have genuinely gotten theories from psychedelics, but are just scared to talk about it. Imagine how many people have had psychedelic experiences who are just generally just scared to make a trip report about it. I've so many, like, all the subscribers I have, I wish they would all make YouTube videos every day about their trips. I wish everybody would just talk about it more frequently and not be scared and just speak about it. And, because I think these things, I think we're all getting different information. We're all getting little pieces to the puzzle. And if people don't express their piece, then, you're kind of leaving everybody hanging from the information. Because the information that you get from your trip, I can learn in my life from watching your video. And
it like, here is a good example of that too. Like, think about video games, just for example. Now, if you go back whenever whenever Pong first came out, it isn't that the people who invented all of that technology and made Pong, it's not that their life was a waste, because now future generations can piggyback on that and constantly evolve it. And whenever they die or whenever they're 80, then the next generation of people are able to evolve that, and it just goes on into an infinite cycle. It's not that you wasted your life doing all of this, it is that you were aiding in allowing the next generation to be able to go even further than they could have without your work in that area.
That Pong description was on point. Yeah. Because that's true.
This is a little off topic, but I am just so fucking impressed with ayahuasca, and even though that I've only had 2 experiences with it so far, it has already impacted me so deeply, and I just want to talk about this little experience real quick. I was sitting right here for a good majority of my first ayahuasca experience, and I was just like looking out at the grass, looking at the trees, looking at the sky, and I was having incredible experiences that would take too long to actually go into. But one thing that I do want to talk about is that I was looking at the grass, and I started seeing all of these different entities in the grass, and during the experience, I felt like these were parts of the actual of nature itself. Like, I would see like serpents coming up from it, and like all of these different entities, as though these were the spirits living inside grass itself, and that like it was all part of just one connected mind in itself. Even it is like a mind inside of a mind inside of a mind inside of a mind, all the way out to the infancy of the universe, to the infancy of the quantum world. Everything is like that, and I just kept seeing like all of these different entities in the grass, but it was like it was all part of the lawn's mind. It's really hard to explain.
I get what you're saying, though.
But it was like it was alive. And I remember looking up at that tree right there and realizing that each individual leaf, each individual branch was all part of the exact same thing, and it was all alive, and it was doing its own thing. It's really hard to explain.
But I get what you're saying, because it's interesting with ayahuasca too, because I've only taken it twice and it only worked for me once. But it's just interesting because it seems to be more about Mother Nature, the plants, the bugs, the connection with the planet and the earth and the grass and it's like, it's interesting how that's ayahuasca's vibe. It's just, that's kind of where it's going towards, the connection with, Mother Nature, the connection with the mind of the planet. But it's interesting how just a little bit different substance, mushrooms, mushrooms to me was more about the clouds, was more about the sky and space, and has this alien type vibe to it.
Yeah, I don't remember the last thing that we were talking about though.
I have no idea either.
Okay, let's see. What was your greatest psilocybin experience like, and what was the dose that?
So the greatest psilocybin experience.
Your most memorable one, the one that changed your life the most.
Let's see. It was either the one. So I haven't been able to take a high dose of psilocybin, like high dose of psilocybin yet. It's the one psychedelic I wish I could. It's just, it was less available to me around in my area, I guess. The psychedelics that are more available are the ones that I have the most experiences with. But mushrooms just influenced me in a weird way, though. It was either one where I took, like, it was about an eighth. It was just about, 3.5. Or there was one where I smoked DMT on it, but that doesn't necessarily count. But it kind of does, because it wasn't a DMT trip, but it wasn't a mushroom trip either. But it definitely was my most impactful experience with mushrooms in general, because after doing research, I found out mushrooms might contain they contain an MAOI. Mushrooms themselves.
Well, psilocybin is very similar to DMT.
Oh yeah, but mushrooms
It is
also
just one
contain
oxygen molecule away from being DMT.
right, but it also contains molecules that are related to harmine, which is in the ayahuasca vine, and this is all in the mushroom. So the fact that it might also contain MAOIs already is most likely why the DMT for some reason lasted hours. Like it affected the trip for hours. Like even though the impact for one on 3.5, it's when I started like getting sucked into these lights, and these lights started becoming another world, and this other world was like a world made of lights, but then it started fading away because I was kind of just like, I was with a friend. So like being with a friend, he would make a joke or laugh or we would distract each other while we were tripping. So
That's
like
one reason why I prefer to trip alone. I rarely ever trip with other people because
spiritual moments, I prefer to trip alone. If I'm like trying to introduce something, because a lot of times I'm trying to introduce people to psychedelics, or a lot of people just want to, a lot of people want to trip with me, so I'm like, yeah, I'll trip with you, let's trip or whatever. Situations happen, but the deepest experience I've ever had, I was always alone on my deepest experiences, on my most impactful ones. Besides, when I do psychedelics with my friend Twiz, it's a little different. Me and him have always taken it the same amount of seriousness, and I smoked DMT on the peak of the mushrooms with him, and it was like this insane thing, because the same thing happened to both of us, which was the most insane thing. Is the same thing happened. The ceiling opened up to a portal almost.
So y'all were having the same trip, basically.
We were having the same exact trip, the same exact visuals that I was seeing, he was seeing. We were able to, so the ceiling opened up to like a two-way mirror, where normally right now the ceiling, I can't see through it. There's not another dimension up there. There's not another world. But it was almost like as if that glass was removed and I could see a whole entire another world. But it was almost like they can always see us, but we can never see them. But like, for that moment I could see them. And this was like, it was almost like I was looking through a glass window. And on the other side of this glass window was a world where these people, humanoid, reptilian-like beings lived. And like, this is the only experience I've ever had with reptilians. And when people talk about reptilians, I used to kind of blow it off and laugh it off and like all this other shit. Like, what the fuck? Like, reptilians? Like, I know I believe in some crazy shit and all, but like, reptilians is a little far. But then after having that experience,
because it's like what you were thinking inside of your head versus what it actually is was two completely different things.
Yeah, exactly. And the reptilians, it was just weird. And it was almost like I was seeing this other world. It was almost like it was another planet, and this is an alien species that lives somewhere else. This alien species, because this planet was fucked up. They lived in a fucked up situation where it was like the whole planet was fucked up. Everybody was so sad and so depressed and dark, and just like there was nothing. It was like they lived in a wasteland, and these they were just there. What's so crazy is though, me and my friend Twiz were able to be like, you see that one? And I was able to be like, yeah, that one's doing this. And like, it was the weirdest fucking telepathy moment that I've ever had in a trip, because it lasted hours, where it's like we had this constant telepathy moment where we were having the same trip, the same exact fucking, like, it's so insane. Because that's when we started bouncing ideas. During that trip is when we started learning how to maneuver in the psychedelic world. That's when we started learning. So during that trip, we would play heavy metal music, then we would play R&B music, then we would play like peaceful psychedelic music, then like we would play frequencies, and
it's all different kinds of genres.
And yeah, we would notice just how basically everything would change the trip. Like we could literally mold the trip based on what music we played, based on everything. And now I've heard this before, like before that moment, I have heard that before, that the shamans would use the Icaros, and I just, it's different when you actually try it out for yourself, to actually try to listen to heavy metal screamo music while you're tripping balls. Like that's like some really like dark, depressing shit. Try to listen to some happy shit. And notice and just notice how your trip changes. Notice how the visuals start to change. Notice how the color starts to change. The feeling of the vibe of the room starts to change. And it's just, that's what we did that trip. And we started going through it, and we started noticing how the beings up there were always there. Or they were still there no matter what we did. We would have a conversation while we were tripping, when we were on the shrooms. We would talk about, we would change the music, we'd do this, look up, they're still there. That window thing is still there. And this is smoking DMT on the peak of mushrooms. And what's so crazy is I've never had a trip like that ever again. But I think recreating that magical moment, it would be hard. I've also never tried that again, but recreating that moment and being in that moment, it was just a magical moment that we both shared the same exact trip. For some reason, we took 1.7 grams of mushrooms and then smoked DMT like an hour and 20 minutes into it. And then for some reason, the trip was more intense than if I took 3.5 grams of mushrooms for the whole time though. Like the DMT, every time I smoke it, it makes me want to do this. Just lay out. When I smoked DMT on the mushrooms, it made me shoot up in my eyes wide open. And like the whole tryptamine visuals just changed. We immediately got this rush of energy where we had to stand up, and we like ran out the house in a way and had to go for a walk, and we're energized and was amazed, and then realized we're outside and we should probably go back inside. But it was completely different, and it was a really just intriguing trip. But I ran out of mushrooms, and the mushroom source ran out, and by the time because I was exploring with mushrooms, and the way I like to explore with psychedelics is low doses and then eventually take high doses and eventually work my way up. I don't want to just dive straight into the highest dose.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It is best to build yourself up rather than just going directly into it, at least in my opinion.
Exactly, but I know so many people that just go directly right into it. But
it is best for some people, but not for everybody. Some people, it is just best to just slowly work your way up, rather than just fucking face first into it.
Right, though, because for me, I'm just trying to learn every aspect of it. So I want to learn the small bits and the big bits, and I want to learn all of it. And by the time I was getting ready to get to the big bits, because I was about 3.5 grams now, and next I was going to do 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, because eventually I want to get up to doing 10 grams of mushrooms. I want to eventually try 10 grams of mushrooms. But I just wanted to work my way up and learn every aspect of it, see if there's a threshold. Because what I like when I'm working my way up with substances, what I've noticed, because I do this with everything I try, is that I will find different thresholds. I will find different doses, different points where you get a high enough dose, it becomes a different drug than it was that lower dose. And then you get to another threshold and it does the same thing. And I've noticed a lot of substances do this. A lot of plants and herbs and extracts and drugs and psychedelics, they all, even weed, you know, they all have this thing where it's like you take a small amount, it's different than if you took a high amount. But yeah.
Now, to kind of go back to one of the LSA experiences that you were talking about, where you just felt the need to get naked and just do your thing, run around, go outside and shit. There's this other psychedelic YouTuber. His name is Trip Whip, and he always has that experience while on LSD. Like if he has like a super high dose of LSD, he'll just have the fucking, like he'll have the desire to just go run in the streets naked. Have you ever had that experience on LSD or just LSA?
Just that one time on LSA. That's it. Well, 2 times on LSA.
It's fucking crazy.
The only thing I can, I guess, maybe acquire to not run down the street, but every time like I've taken LSD, like not even on sexual shit, but like every time I'm taking LSD with my girlfriend, like it's almost like I don't know, it's just clothes are constricting. Sometimes when I'm tripping in general, clothes feel like they're just constricted, and it's like I just want to be free. So I'll just walk around, you know, freely when I'm tripping. Generally, like if I'm with my girlfriend, but that was the first time I just randomly did it alone, because I've also noticed tripping with your significant other is much different than tripping with your friends, and it's also different than tripping alone, like because tripping with its intentions, like you know, when you're tripping alone, for me, always my alone things are more spiritual. It's always the most deepest spiritual moments, the moments where I got all my theories about the universe, the moments where I got all these theories about my life when I need to get my shit together. It's always been alone. But tripping with, you know, a significant other is different because there's also love mixed into it, not just love from the psychedelic, but love from the relationship, you know. So that's mixed into it, that you have a connection already with a person.
Yeah, and even having sex with your significant other while under the influence of one of a psychedelic like LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, it becomes more than what it is whenever you're sober. It actually becomes a much more spiritual experience between the two partners.
Oh yeah, like having sex on LSD is like the all-time, yeah, it's definitely the most intense thing I've ever done sexually, like wise, because it's so beautiful. There was a moment where like I had sex without having sex, like never went inside but felt like went inside. Like it's like having spiritual sex. I never even researching tantra and shit, like you get into tantra. I was researching tantra, and then it's like, okay, well, having sex on psychedelics is similar to, it's tantra without the work, because like doing tantra naturally requires like work, because there's a process to it to get it correctly. With psychedelics, you can have those moments, you know, with your significant other, you know, just on psychedelics, because I did it with my girlfriend on LSD, you know, without actually having sex, feeling like we're having sex, without actually, you know, doing it, but spiritually doing it. It's like our souls mate together. And even when you do have sex on psychedelics, it's like your souls
are dancing with each other.
They're dancing together in this beautiful love-making thing, and it's fucking beautiful, you know, especially when it's with someone you love, right? Because then it's like this immense love thing that's like so insane. But like some experiences like that are just, it's different because that's a recent experience for me, like as in like the end of last year. Before the end of last year, really almost all my experiences were kind of, I never really had the experience to be able to trip with someone that I'm with. So it's like, it's been a little interesting being able to trip with someone that you love. Because, you know, tripping with my girlfriend, I've been able to, she kind of reminds me that sometimes I take things too seriously. Sometimes I'm a funny, serious guy, where I'm like, I'm always like, I'm a spiritual, I take psychedelics spiritually, you know, this is me, and I can have fun on it. And she's just like, just a free wild spirit, you could say. But like reminds me that I need to be a little more of a free, wild spirit too. You know.
Let's see. So, there's one last question that I want to get to. What do you think the impact of legalizing psychedelics worldwide would have on the entire world and society in its entirety?
I think if psychedelics were legalized, eventually they will become normalized. Eventually they'll become the norm of the world. Like alcohol and tobacco are just the norm of our society. These are just the normal things that our society, that our people do. I mean, people don't think twice about it. Especially during this quarantine, I've noticed a lot of people are buying more alcohol. There's this challenge now that, you know, it's based on alcohol. But if that were to happen, there'd be challenges based on mushrooms right now flowing through social media, which means that if more people started doing psychedelics, more people start being more aware, connected to what's really going on. So I think the impact would be that over a long period of time, because it's going to take a long time to remove the brainwashing and damaging that's been done to our society since, you know, the demonization of psychedelics. But I think if that were to happen, then over time, it's just natural that over time, eventually humans would start to go back to the same thing that happened to weed. You know, it took, I don't know how many years, but now majority of human beings' belief on whether weed is good or bad is obviously we know weed is good. But the view of it 30 years ago was weed is bad, cannabis is not that good, and they try to still argue the fact. But I think, you know, the same thing would happen with psychedelics. If psychedelics became legal, that they would try to argue the fact until they obviously couldn't, because time would eventually prove them wrong. But this is happening though in real life. Johns Hopkins University is, you know, doing studies on psychedelics and all this shit. And I generally do think that psilocybin mushrooms will most likely be legal or decriminalized, because there are still right now there are cities that have decriminalized psychedelics. So it's like the United States, you know, we're making moves. It's just slowly moving, but we're getting there.
I completely agree with you, and I do hope to see a future where all psychedelics are made accessible to everybody without somebody getting locked up for having these things. But I want to thank you for being on the second episode of Podcast Infinity. I do hope that you enjoyed making this episode. I know that it was kind of a long process, but...
Oh, no, it was fucking dope, bro. Dope conversation.
I completely agree. Is there anything that you would like to tell the audience, anything that you would like to point to, social media, any future plans, anything dealing with your channel, stuff like that?
I guess the only thing is, so my YouTube channel is Mark Dreams 2. My other YouTube channel is Mark Dreams Trip Reports. Instagram, Mark Dreams 25. And I guess soon on the channel, coming on the channel, I'll be having a documentary on LSA, but that won't be for a few months. I'm working on a couple books, but those books won't be done for about a year, maybe a year and a half. Have a couple books out, and yeah, but we'll see. We'll get there.
So I do hope that you all enjoyed this video. If y'all did, leave a like, subscribe to DMT Infinity if you haven't already, and also subscribe to Mark Dreams 2 here on YouTube.com. And as always, I'm your host DMT Infinity, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.